And it's 18 minutes to wait.
Well, new Waka-jumping legislation has been introduced to Parliament, designed to ensure MPs who resign from a political party can't stay on in the House as independents or members of another party. The bill is part of the coalition deal between Labour and New Zealand First. The practice is also known as party hopping. And some past examples of MPs who left their party but stayed on in Parliament include Peter Dunne, Jim Anderton, several New Zealand First MPs in the late 1990s and a slew of National MPs in the early to mid-90s. The National Party isn't keen on that proposed legislation. Its leader, Bill English, is in the Wellington studio this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Susie.
Let's first of all, though, just get a quick comment on what Phil Twyford was speaking about earlier, saying that National was piecemeal on housing. What's your response to what he had to say?
What you heard there was the government adopting the policy that we had. That is a substantial build program with Housing New Zealand. That's why they're not restructuring, because that's up and running and it would cut across it to restructure Housing New Zealand. And the so-called shift in policy about tenants is coming about because other operators are showing that you can be better tenants, and the social investment analysis is showing some tenants should stay in state houses longer because it works for them. Others should move on to the private market, and you can discriminate. So it's good that they're basically staying on course with the social housing policy, with the exception of stopping people moving out of Auckland for reasons he couldn't explain, and not bringing any other operators into the market.
All right, well, let's bounce back to the Waka-jumping, if that makes sense. Why is this legislation one that you oppose?
Because of the principle, people are elected on the basis of the electoral law, not the party leader. This is legislation which has only ever really had the advocacy of New Zealand First, but it's a bottom line for the coalition. So Labour have had to agree with it, and that's understandable. The Greens have always opposed it, but it looks like they're going to have to agree with it this time. So it's a sort of a New Zealand First insurance policy. Okay,
do you object to it particularly for electorate MPs or for all MPs?
I object to it for all MPs. Look, it just gives party leaders, and I'm one, too much power over who's in Parliament and who's out of Parliament. It does get messy. We've had periods in New Zealand politics where it's been messy. In fact, a lot of the people who left their parties and stayed in Parliament started other parties. That was a necessary part of MMP. And in this case, it's just New Zealand First worried that one of its MPs might defect.
Is it not fair enough, though, for the coalition that it would want to try to keep a level of stability, and this is perhaps the way to do it?
Well, the stability comes from agreeing on policy and executing it. You may have some maverick MPs. Parliament's just got to deal with that. It's dealt with it plenty of times before, quite capably.
Isn't it a way, though, too, of no one becoming bigger than their party, essentially?
Look, there's all those arguments. The fact is you're elected according to the electoral laws of New Zealand, and this is trying to impose an extra degree of party discipline on top of the electoral laws that voters are quite happy with as fair expression of their will. Because in the end, this is about the voters' will. That's how the current law works. The Waka-jumping bill is about imposing essentially a party leader's will on top of that to try and make it tidier. Particularly,
though, for list MPs, people don't vote specifically for those people, do they? They literally, it's about proportionality. So what would it matter in that case?
And parties control their list. I mean, what they're talking about here is the right to fix mistakes. You get to sit down as a party and go through the list to rank people in order, so you're clear you're getting who you want, and that some people are in the margin and some people are never going to make it. So if parties make mistakes, we shouldn't have to pass a law to clean it up. And it's not obvious that...
But if parties do make mistakes, isn't it easier to clean it up while you're going along?
Yeah, but not to use the force of the law to do it. I mean, this gives the party leader far too much capacity. They basically can say to an MP who's giving them a hard time in their caucus, if you go too far, mate, we'll get you out of Parliament.
Was this something that New Zealand First put on the table in the negotiations with National?
Well, I'm not discussing our negotiations, but as I said at the start, it's a bottom line for New Zealand First, and it's understandable that Labour agreed to it. I think a bit harder for the Greens to explain that they've agreed to it because they've always opposed it.
But was it something that was even talked about within your negotiations, and was indeed it something that the deal fell over on?
I think you can assume that if it's a bottom line for the coalition, the current coalition, then it was raised.
It was raised, so was it rejected then?
Well, I'm not going to discuss our negotiations, but all I'm saying is I can understand why Labor was in a position where they agreed with it. We're not the coalition. We don't have to agree with it. It's a bad piece of law.
Is it fair to say, though, that if you disagree with it now, as you are telling us, that you disagreed with it then?
As I said, I'm not going to discuss coalition negotiations.
Thank you very much for your time. Bill English there, the leader of the National Party, at 13 minutes to 8 on Morning Report. And let's now look south. The liquidators of a company that was supposed to clean up thousands